components. It may be embodied in one person or two people or a committee, but it should consist of approximately a third that's genuinely concerned or committed about the issue, a third that has expertise or data or knowledge and knows what they're talking about, and a third that can actually get results. And that may be one person, or it may be an entity consisting of multiple people. But leadership is critical, not just leaders. The second thing is that when you adopt a merit-based or this kind of leadership model, you recognize the value of task-specific expertise. So we typically say, like the Black Leadership Council years ago, first thing they said is, we got to have a preacher be here, and then you take a Norma Jackson and a Den Davis because they're prominent or loud or whatever else, and then you end up with folks in charge of stuff and they may not even know what they're doing. And if they do, we resent them because they have an advantage over the rest of us. Well, this model says, do we have a health crisis? Then how do we need to construct the health component to be able to engage in issues like diabetes and obesity and stroke? So now, what we've not said, let's bring together a committee. What we have done is said, who are key people that can bring resources and have impact on our health going forward? Mm-hmm. Well, the person who's on the White House, heads a White House task force and is in charge of health in the Senate, I've already talked to him, and he said, I would love to be able to work with this initiative. Senator Hatch, who also worked with the state of Black Iowa, he was our chief legislative liaison years ago. Now there are other groups out there like the Cancer Society and the Heart Association that can bring resources to the table. Mm-hmm. We have a state minority health liaison, Janice Edmond Wells, that is committed to helping us get healthy. So rather than try to say, well, what 9 lay people can we get together to go raise hell and beg folks to fix our problem, we're saying we need a plan, develop a strong plan, identify what resources exist that we can tap into, and build a collaborative effort that can mobilize and have impact. Mm-hmm. Now, most of the time we don't do that. One of the exercises we did, one of the big areas we need to address is economic development.
Oh yeah.
Well, we did a training exercise last week. Wow. And folks get homework and stuff, and and one of the things we also talk about is you need to start meetings on time and end meetings on time. Mm-hmm. But we said, what are some of the areas, before we develop an economic development plan, what are some of the unique things that we can do to impact our economic condition? Well, I don't know if we can take callers or whatever, but I'd like to throw that question out there and have folks call in and give us a few ideas of what specifically we could do, and then I'll give an example of the kind of things we came up in the training, and then how you pair those things that you come up with, both with your plan and with resources that exist.
Yeah. Let's give the phone number here at KBBG because you can call in. The number is 234-1441. And we invite you to do that. If you have a concern, a question, or an opinion, call us. Now, I wanted to ask you another question, but I can't remember who was involved in this. But at the time I read it in the Morning Register, I was so upset. It made the statement, or at least was buying the concept, and this is back to education. If children can't read by 3rd grade, pass them on. Pass them on. 3rd grade, if they can't read? I mean, do you know how horrible that is? That's like condemning people to death because they're not going to get through school. They're not going to be able to read, finish their education. They're going to drop out, be on the street doing drugs. And the other thing that I find, we are in denial. We definitely are in denial about what we're doing. Because once we say we are willing to accept the responsibility, then that means you have to do something that supports what you just said. And what we have now is just people yakety yakety yak and really nothing being formed towards solutions. So, that really disturbed me, that, third grade.
But
I don't know, I hope that they don't do that, but it certainly has been talked about.
But you know what though, the fact that they had that conversation actually is good, because the way it was before is we just, as a state, basically passed kids on.
Yeah, right.
Remember, who was it, Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Sure. Sure.
He was one of the very few superintendents in the state that actually said, there's nothing wrong with their brains. If they don't learn it, then we're gonna hold them back. That was years ago.
Years ago.
I remember we did our education hearing in Davenport. Jim Hester was president of the school board and was stunned when they said, if you don't get it by fourth grade, we will never teach again, basics. He said he didn't believe it until the superintendent confirmed it. Same in Cedar Rapids, same in Des Moines. This was the standard. The fact that they actually are saying pass them on in third grade in a public debate, that is only occurring because now there are those folks who say you can't keep passing them.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually is a sign that people are now discussing what they once ago just accepted, and that was sending kids through.
Yeah.
So once again, there are challenges that face us, but we also have opportunities like we've never had before. And this is where we have to come up with different priorities. I suspect that we will have at least 5,000 families in the African American community this weekend that will cook out.
Okay.
This weekend.
Uh-huh.
They will drop maybe $50 or $100 on meat.
Uh-huh.
And some of those folks partake in liquid refreshments that aren't just made by Coke and Pepsi.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will find about 5,000 families that will spend $100 to $200 on their weekend fun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 5,000 times 200 is $1 million.
Okay.
That means that those folks could create infrastructure to engage meaningful challenges in our community. In fact, I believe there will be at least 5,000 of us in Des Moines that will do something like that. Now, maybe they won't drop 200, but I think they'll probably drop 100. Liquor ain't cheap. I remember looking at, I don't drink, but I remember walking by and they had this big case of, they had liquor, Budweiser on sale at Hy-Vee. And they were like, it was like 24 for a case or something like that. And I was stunned. Now, you will have folks who will get at least a couple cases of beer,
Mm-hmm.
couple bottles of liquor. Like if you go down to Oak Ridge, it's the most impressive display of Mad Dog 2020 and Wild Irish Rose I've ever seen. Yes, no, but you walk in, and just, a case of cigarettes is what? I know a pack is
Well, it must
$7,
be
$8,
almost $40 now.
So
For a
now,
carton of cigarettes in some places.
so now we even, let's say we have 1,000 folks in our community in Waterloo who do that and drop $100. That's $100,000. That's payroll.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's payroll. Now, we have been conditioned to believe that we have nothing. We don't have anything. If you even take a population, but we do have the resources to fix our own problems.
Mm-hmm.
What we lack is the will to do so.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we lack.
And I wanted to ask you what you think about the prison population is growing so fast, and you know they just had a big fight down in Anamosa, and our people, some of those people are never gonna come out. Others may be 20 years old, 16 years old, whatever it is, they might be 40 when they come out. Look what we've lost.
But you know, this is where data is so important. Despite the historic and unprecedented census undercount of African Americans, they're still saying we have 80-something thousand folks. which is way under. That's about 40, 50, 60,000 less than we actually have living in the state. At least half of those are males. And we often get quoted as, or heard saying 30, 40, 50% of the black population is in jail. And we believe that. We got, according to the census, we have 80-something thousand people, and according to the state, we got 8,000 inmates.
Okay. 8,000.
Inmates.
Yeah,
That's all, that's everybody, including white folks.
yeah.
We got about maybe 2,000, 2,500 black folks in jail. So about 90 to 95% of us on any given day are walking around free and aren't in prison. Now, if we believe that 30, 40, 50% of our population is locked up, we begin from an entirely different place than if we understand that 90 to 95% of our people are free. So you know, and of those that are incarcerated, only a fraction of them are eligible to get out on an annual basis. So I would submit that if we use data to drive our problem solving, that we would focus more on the need for gainful employment and skill training for the 90 to 95% of our people who are free, than focus on the 0.7% of our population that will be eligible to be released from prison this year. Now, that doesn't happen. We spend a disproportionate amount of energy on an area like that. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't focus on justice, that's one of the things we address, but the points where we need to address justice often are a lot different than where we focus. We focus on incarceration. We ought to focus on things like black on black crime, domestic violence, you know, equitable application of justice, both on the civil and criminal docket. Those are all things we address with people who aren't locked up. Some of our folks deserve to be locked up.
Yes, that's true.
You know, some deserve to be locked up, and I hope they don't ever get out, okay? But, I mean, in terms of developing a strategy or plan or agenda, this is where data becomes so useful. Because if we understand that the problem with our young men is that they can't get gainful employment, then a solution becomes the reintroduction of vocational and technical education in our urban centers. Every single one of our urban centers ought to have a vocational and technical education program that begins in middle school. Our kids ought to be learning how to do welding and carpentry and plumbing, and when they leave high school, they could leave high school and get 50 and 60 and 70 and 80,000 hour jobs. And then they wouldn't be going to prison costing $30,000. But we focus on the young people after they're in the system, as opposed to what we need to introduce. Seriously, vocational and technical education. Now, and I want to throw one other figure out. Our legislators and government officials and politicians have voted potentially $250 million or more for construction projects over the next 30 years, including school construction, jail construction, highway construction, government building construction, subsidized construction. If you're going to spend that much, why wouldn't you train anybody for those jobs? That's one of the dumbest things. You know, I love Forrest Gump because he said, Mama said, stupid is what stupid does.
Yeah.
You know,
One of my favorites.
am I being extreme? I mean, issues like this, I lose perspective sometimes because I graduated from a technical high school. But does it make sense to train people to do jobs when you appropriate $250 billion for an area?
And DOT has precise plans to spend big dollars for people.
Really?
But from the book, the state of blacks in our talking about economic, and this come from his book, that in the 1990s, blacks in the state of Iowa earned over $1 billion That's,
Ken, you don't,
that's a lot of money.
we don't believe that either.
We earn a lot more
But we
than that
do.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, we do.
Yeah, and you telling me that